Srimad Bhagvatam Gruntaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janma Yasya Yato Nivayat Taratascha Tesu Vigyaswarat.
Janma Yasya Yatam Vayataratascha Tesu Vigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha.
Tejo Varimridam Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargo
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma projita kaichotra.
Dharma projita kaitovutra.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Shivadam tapa trayon mulanam.
Shivadam tapa trayon mulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kim va parer Ishvaraha.
Kim va parer Ishvaraha.
Sadyo hridi avrudite tra.
Sadyo hridi avrudite tra.
Kriti bihi sususabistakshanat.
Kriti bihi sususabistakshanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in maturity.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam.
Sukha mukhad amrita dravya samyutam.
Sukha mukhad amrita dravya samyutam.
Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho ratska bhuvibhavaka.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvibhavaka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna
Shambhantam Swakata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Hridyantaksto Hiyad Bhagavani
Vidyantastu Hi Avadrani
Vidunati Srihitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic Lord,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad-Gita,
or to hear from it directly from the Bhagavad-Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body constantly engaged in hearing.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Prayeshwa Bhadeshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttama
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhakti Naistiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadaya
Cheta etaranavidam
Chaitaitarnavi
Stitvam Sattve Prasidati.
Stitam Sabbe Prasidi.
By development of devotional service,
By developing devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the mode of passion and ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And this material life and affairs are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manas
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha
Bhakti
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
Tattva Vijnanam
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
with meditating creation
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes alive by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Hridaya Granti
Chidyante Sarvasamsaya
Chidyante Sarvasam
Siyante Chasya Karmani
Chidyante Chakarmani
Drishta Evatmanishwari.
Chivatmanishwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus, the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsayam Samagran,
and enable one to come at once to the stage of Samsaya Samagama.
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
Understand the supreme absolute truth personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text number 8. Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Aditavan Tvaparado
Aditavam Dvaparado
Pitur Dvaiv Payanad Aham.
Vidvaipayana.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. At the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement, Vedic literature, this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagvatam, which is equal to all the Vedas from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The statement made by Srila Sukadeva Goswami that the topmost transcendentalist, who is beyond the jurisdiction of regulations and restrictions, mainly takes to the task of hearing and glorifying the personality of Godhead, is verified by his personal example. Sukadeva Goswami, being a recognized liberated soul and the topmost transcendentalist, was accepted by all of the topmost sages present in the meeting during the last 7 days of Maharaj Parikshit. He cites from the example of his life that he was attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord, and he studied Srimad Bhagvatam from his great father, Sri Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam, or for that matter, any other scientific literature, cannot be studied at home by one's own intellectual capacity. Medical books of anatomy or physiology are available in the market, but no one can become a qualified medical practitioner simply by reading such books at home. One has to be admitted to the medical college and study the books under the guidance of learned professors. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate study of the science of Godhead, can only be learned by studying it at the feet of a realized soul like Srila Vyasadeva. Although Sukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Vyasadeva, who compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of another great soul, Sri Narada Muni. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed a learned Brahmana to study Srimad Bhagavatam from a personal Bhagavata. Srimad Bhagavatam is based on the transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, entourage, and variegatedness of the Supreme Person, and it is spoken by the incarnation of the Personality Godhead, Srila Vyasadeva. Pastimes of the Lord are executed in cooperation with his pure devotees, and consequently historical incidences are mentioned in this great literature because they are related to Krishna. It is called Brahma Samitam because it is the sound representative of Lord Krishna, like the Bhagavad-Gita. And Bhagavad-Gita is the sound incarnation of the Lord because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representative of the Lord because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. As stated in the beginning of this book, it is the essence of the Vedic desire tree and a natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras, the topmost philosophical thesis on the subject matter of Brahman. Vyasadeva appeared at the end of Dwapara Yuga as the son of Satyavati, and therefore the word Dwapara Ado, or the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, in this context means just prior to the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The logic of this statement, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, is comparable to that of calling the upper portion of the tree the beginning. The root of the tree is the beginning of the tree, but in common knowledge, the upper portion of the tree is first seen. That is why the end of the tree is accepted as the beginning. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yeah, so this Srimad Bhagavatam obviously is the greatest scripture in the history of the world. It's a scientific book. It explains in depth who is Krishna, what are his qualities, what are his pastimes, what are his likes, his dislikes, what his body, spirit, transcendental body looks like, how it's different from material bodies, and so forth. It's all scientific knowledge, all verified. And by hearing this, one can become liberated from the influence of the modes of material nature and engage in pure devotional service, always remembering the verses and purports in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita, and thus going back to Godhead at the end of life. So if we accept it as it is, then we make spiritual advancement. If we read other books, especially books with commentaries of Mayavadis, we will, let's say, not understand the glory and the profound, let's say, knowledge in the Bhagavatam. And we risk never understanding it. So we should never hear from Mayavadis, and we should always strive to hear from pure devotees in Krishna consciousness. So, therefore, Bhagavatam is called Brahma Samitam. It's the sound representative of Lord Krishna. Like the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita is the sound incarnation of the Lord because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord. And Srimad Bhagvatam is the sound representative of the Lord because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. So somebody might say, well, look, okay, I can read Bhagavatam, but it's not going to get me a job. It's not going to get me ahead in my company. It's not going to basically do anything in the immediate for me. Well, that is a false narrative. That's not true. By studying Bhagavatam, you'll do better in your job. You will do better in all your personal and interpersonal relationships. You'll do better as far as controlling your time and your energy because you'll use it only for Krishna use those assets only for Krishna consciousness. And all good qualities will develop in a person who regularly hears and repeats Srimad Bhagavatam. And those qualities are enumerated, the 26 qualities of a devotee. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam is for all-around success in human life. That's the way we should see it. And if we do see it like that and gradually develop our faith through regular hearing and repeating and remembering, then our life is a complete success because at the end of life we go back to Godhead. And during this life we are with Krishna all the time. Now, to understand this more deeply, Srila Prabhupada has given many, many other purports, and especially, first of all, in the Krishna book, I want to go back to this 70th chapter about Krishna's daily activities. By the way, the homework for a couple days ago was to explain what Krishna does during the Brahma Muhurta period in the morning, and what practices we can do following his example, and what things that only he can do and we can't do. Right? Things that Krishna does in Brahma Muhurta that we can also do in practice. And there are things that Krishna does, but they are impossible for us to do. So one thing we can do in the Brahma Muhurta is wake up early. It says in this chapter of the Krishna books, 3 hours before Brahma Muhurta, that is the sunrise. And that's what Krishna does strictly every day in Dwarka. And then he washes his mouth, hands, and feet. Later on he's going to take a full bath. And he begins to meditate upon himself. But there's a reason why he meditates on himself, because he is the Supreme Absolute Truth. He is the Brahman, he is the Paramatma, and he is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And his body and his soul are non-different. So by meditating on himself, he's meditating on the highest truth, the summum bonum of all spiritual striving. And he has all the opulences, riches, beauty, knowledge, power, fame, renunciation, and so forth. So he meditates upon himself because he is the absolute truth. Living entities are his eternal servants, and therefore we meditate on him, or as it's recommended, meditate on Radha and Krishna, his merciful internal energy of love and devotion, personified as Srimati Radharani, and then himself, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, after his meditation is over, he takes a bath, and he changes into fresh clothing, clean clothing, and he has a upavastra, or a chadar. And then he chants his Gayatri mantra and offers grains and things into a fire sacrifice. So these are all things that he does that is possible for us to do. But then there are other things, such as meditating on himself, that we cannot do. We could try that, but it wouldn't get us anywhere. He's meditating upon himself because, number one, there's no difference between his body and his soul, whereas there's a difference between our body and our soul. Secondly, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are the eternal servant of the Lord. So therefore, we can't meditate on ourselves, but we can meditate on Krishna. Those who do meditate on themselves, these are the people that say, Soham. They believe that they are God, therefore they meditate on themselves, but they don't get very far. It's basically a waste of time. Okay, so, and also, every one of Krishna's senses and bodily parts can perform the functions of the other senses, whereas our senses are limited to one function. So there are many reasons why we cannot meditate on ourselves, but we should meditate on Radha Krishna. Also, Krishna's existence is not relative. Our existence is always relative, and we're always dependent and relative. So this means that Krishna is self-sufficient. He doesn't need anything from anyone else for his existence. He doesn't need anyone's help. He's completely independent. Although he is the source of the creation, and although he can descend from the spiritual world into the material world, but at no time is he subject to the passage of time, to the three types of misery, of this one of the body caused by other bodies, caused by the devatas in the form of natural catastrophic events. He's not subject to any of that. He's not subject to the passage of time. He is completely independent. He doesn't need anyone's help. He is the proprietor of everything, and he is the controller of everything, and he's self-satisfied. He's not attracted by mundane beauty, and even in the spiritual world, his activities are not mundane in any way. He doesn't engage in mundane sex or anything like that. His amorous pastimes with the gopis is on a transcendental level, without any hint of lust, anger, greed, any of those qualities. So, unless we understand these things, we are all dependent, and our life is always relative to something else. Like, for example, in order to see, we need the light of the sun and the moon and electricity. Krishna doesn't need any of those things. He is the cause of the sunshine, and he is the cause of all causes. So therefore, and another thing is that we are limited by time and space. The Lord is not limited by time and space. He's the controller of both, and he expands both of those things. And then also, his body is completely spiritual and not subject to the laws of material nature. Our body is subject to the laws of material nature. So, and then Krishna in Brahma Muhurta gives cows in charity. He gives many groups of cows made up of 13,084 cows with their firstborn calves next to them. So, it doubles the number. And each cow is fully decorated, gold-plated horns and silken cloths and so many things. And he also is present in Brahma Muhurta in over 16,000 palaces with over 16,000 wives and 10 children with each wife. And he's with each one of them. And then when he's ready, when he's finished with the Brahma Muhurta, he becomes one. Instead of 16,000, now he becomes one. He amalgamates all those 16,000 expansions into one, and he goes to the Sudharma assembly house, which is special. That assembly house, none of the afflictions are present in this assembly house. So in other words, there are 6 types of negative afflictions of human beings. One feels hunger, one feels thirst, one experiences lamentation and illusion, and one experiences old age and death. None of those things are present while people are in the Sudharma assembly hall. And so we can see there are myriad number of things that Krishna does. Some of them we can do, and some of them we can't do. Right? We can't imitate him. So some of those things that we can do can be interpreted by mundane nonsense people as being, human activities, and therefore they think because he's engaged in so-called human activities, he's an ordinary human being. That's the way they think incorrectly. But it's not true. Krishna is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always enjoys ekarasa. That means whether he has the body of a baby or of the other thing is his body never gets older than maybe 16 or 20 years old. It's always a pristine youth. Our body deteriorates over time. And he always has his full potency. Therefore, as a little child, as a little baby, he killed Sakatasura, the cart demon, when he was only a few days old. And he destroyed the cart. And then also he killed Putana when he was just a little baby. And by suckling her, he was able to kill her. And so we see there's so many things that Krishna can do that we can't do. But there are things that Krishna does that we should follow. We can't imitate, but we should follow, such as waking up early, such as meditating on Radha and Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna in the Brahma Muhurta period, and such as we can do some charity. There are some things we can do, but whenever Krishna seems to be acting as an ordinary human being, it is not the same as us who are actually real ordinary living entities, right? So anyway, there's a whole list I just went through of these type of things that Krishna does that we can do in the Brahma Muhurta, and things that he does that it's impossible to imitate because we don't have the potency to do it. Okay, so then continuing, another thing Krishna can do is he can perform, any one of his senses can perform the function of all the other senses. That's something that's different because he has a transcendental body. Angani yasya sakalendriya rittimanti. So we don't have that ability. And another thing is that Krishna is the cause of the whole creation, and he's the cause of all causes. We are totally dependent on Krishna. We're not the cause of anything except stool and urine, maybe, but Krishna is the cause of everything. And also, Also, Krishna doesn't have any specific duty to perform. If he acts as if he has a duty, it's simply to inspire other living entities to work in a similar way. But he is not obliged to do anything because he's self-sufficient, because he's already, he's perfect in every way. And Krishna doesn't become perfect. He is always perfect. We strive to become perfect, but Krishna is always perfect. So it's not possible to become God by any process, because God is one. But then again, he can do things that we can't do, such as expand his body infinitely into many, many forms, all equally potent or partially potent as himself. Okay, and another thing Krishna does in the Brahma Muhurta is he's pleasing many different living entities. He begins with his own family members. He has over 16,000 family members. And then there are all kinds of people in Dwarka, and he pleases all of them by fulfilling their different desires. So he's offering them flower garlands, betel nuts, sandalwood pulp, and other fragrant cosmetic articles that he also anoints his body with, or smears on his body before he goes out. So these are all his daily duties and activities. And so when he goes to the Sudharma Assembly House, he administers to all the issues of governance of a perfect society. Okay, so then our purpose in life, once we become Krishna conscious, should be to always hear and glorify the activities of the Lord. His body, his relationship with other living entities, and his manifestation of extreme mercy, etc. So, the way to glorify the Lord is explained in the following episode in Krishna's daily activities. It says, once upon a time, a person arrived at the gateway of the assembly house who was unknown to all the members of the assembly, and with the permission of Lord Krishna, he was admitted into the assembly by the doorkeeper. The doorkeeper was ordered to present him before the Lord, and the man appeared and offered his respectful obeisances unto the Lord with folded hands. It had happened that when King Jarasandha conquered all other kingdoms, many kings did not bow their heads before Jarasandha, and consequently all of them, numbering 20,000, were arrested and made his prisoners. The man brought before Lord Krishna by the doorkeeper was a messenger from all these imprisoned kings. Being duly presented before the Lord, the man began to relay a message from the kings as follows. So this is a written message, and it says, Dear Lord, you are the eternal form of transcendental bliss and knowledge. As such, you are beyond the reach of the mental speculation or vocal description of any materialistic man within this world. A slight portion of your glories can be known by persons fully surrendered unto your lotus feet, and by your grace only, such persons become freed from all material anxieties. Dear Lord, we are not among these surrendered souls. We are still within the duality and illusion of this material existence. So this is a letter from the kings, about 20,000 of them, who did not surrender to Jarasandha, and therefore he arrested them and put them in his jail. So they're saying that, Dear Lord, we are not among the surrendered souls. We are still within the duality and illusion of this material existence. We therefore take shelter of your lotus feet, for we are afraid of the cycle of birth and death. Dear Lord, we think that there are many living entities like us who are eternally entangled in fruitive activities and their reactions. They are never inclined to follow your instructions by performing devotional service, although it is pleasing to the heart and most auspicious for one's existence. On the contrary, they are against the path of Krishna conscious life, and they are wandering within the three worlds, impelled by the illusory energy of material existence. So, the messenger comes with a message, but in this message, there's a long litany of glorification of the Lord. That's the way people or devotees approach the Lord. They don't come right in front of the Lord and say, hey, I need to have some money for the end of the month. I can't pay my rent. No, that's not the way to approach the Lord. Dear Lord, who can estimate your mercy and your powerful activities? You are present always as the insurmountable force of eternal time, baffling the indefatigable desires of the materialists, who are thus repeatedly confused and frustrated. We therefore offer our respectful obeisance unto you in your form of eternal time. Dear Lord, you are the proprietor of all the worlds, and you have incarnated yourself with your plenary expansion, Lord Balarama. It is said that your appearance in this incarnation is for the purpose of protecting the faithful and destroying the miscreants. Under circumstances, how is it possible that miscreants like Jarasandha can put us into such deplorable conditions of life against your authority? We are puzzled at the situation and cannot understand how it is possible. It may be that Jarasandha has been deputed to give us such trouble because of our past misdeeds. But we have heard from revealed scriptures that anyone who surrenders unto your lotus feet is immediately immune to the reactions of sinful life. We therefore offer ourselves wholeheartedly unto your shelter, and we hope that your Lordship will now give us full protection. We have now come to the real conclusion of our lives. Our kingly positions were nothing but the reward of our past pious activities, just as our suffering, imprisonment by Jarasandha is the result of our past impious activities. We realize now that the reactions of both pious and impious activities are temporary, and that we can never be happy in this conditioned life. So these are the realizations of these kings. And they're explaining their realizations to Krishna. And this is what you would call the real face of reality in this world for everyone. The material body is awarded to us by the modes of material nature, and on account of this, we are full of anxieties. The material condition of life simply involves bearing the burden of this dead body. As a result of fruitive activities, we have thus been subjected to being beasts of burden for these bodies, and being forced by conditioned life, we have given up the pleasing life of Krishna consciousness. Now we realize that we are the most fallen persons. We have been entangled in the network of material reactions due to our ignorance. We have therefore come to the shelter of your lotus feet, which can immediately eradicate all the results of fruitive action and thus free us from the contamination of material pains and pleasures. So this is the way to approach the Lord, right? And what are they asking for? They're not asking for anything material. They're asking basically that the Lord protect them. So now they're going to take up devotional service seriously and not be enamored by being kings and being money men and having power. They want to become simply the humble servants of the Lord. Dear Lord, because we are now surrendered souls at your lotus feet, you can give us relief from the entrapment of fruitive action made possible by the form of Jarasandha. So they see Jarasandha in the same way that Indians should see the Muslim invasion of India. Why did that happen when India is the land of Dharma? Only because people were not following Dharma correctly in India. Therefore, they got invaded by the Muslims, and Muslims controlled them for so many years. Over 800 years, they had control of most of India. So he says, "Dear Lord, it is known to you that Jarasandha possesses," it says, "Dear Lord, because we are now surrendered souls at your lotus feet, you can give us relief from the entrapment of fruitive action made possible by the form of Jarasandha. Dear Lord, it is known to you that Jarasandha possesses the power of 10,000 elephants, and with this power he has imprisoned us, just as a lion hypnotizes a flock of sheep. Dear Lord, you have already fought with Jarasandha 18 times consecutively, out of which you have defeated him 17 times by surpassing his extraordinarily powerful position. But in your 18th fight, you exhibited your human behavior, and thus it appeared that you were defeated. Dear Lord, we know very well that Jarasandha cannot defeat you at any time, for your power, strength, resources, and authority are all unlimited. No one can equal you or surpass you. Your apparent defeat by Jarasandha in the 18th engagement was nothing but an exhibition of human behavior. Unfortunately, foolish Jarasandha could not understand your tricks, and he has since then become puffed up over his material power and prestige. Specifically, he has arrested and imprisoned us, knowing fully that as your devotees, we are subordinate to your sovereignty." The messenger continued, "Now I have explained the awful position of the kings." Now that's the end of the letter. So now the messenger is speaking. He says, "Now I have explained the awful position of the kings, and your lordship can consider and do whatever you like. As the messenger and representative of all those imprisoned kings, I have submitted my words before your lordship and presented their prayers to you. All the kings are very anxious to see you so that they can all personally surrender at your lotus feet. My dear Lord, be merciful upon them and act for their good fortune." At the very moment the messenger of the imprisoned kings was presenting their appeal before the Lord, the great sage Narada arrived. Because he was a great saint, his hair was dazzling like gold. And when he entered the assembly house, it appeared that the sun god was personally present in the midst of the assembly. Lord Krishna is the worshipable master of even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Yet, as soon as he saw that the sage Narada had arrived, he immediately stood up with his ministers and secretaries to receive the great sage and offer him respectful obeisances by bowing his head. The great sage Narada took a comfortable seat, and Lord Krishna worshipped him with all paraphernalia as required for the regular reception of a saintly person. While trying to satisfy Naradaji, Lord Krishna spoke the following words in his sweet and natural voice. So you see, this just keeps going on and on. It's layer after layer of nectar, and it shows how people relate to Krishna and the nature, the sweet nature of transcendental, pastimes. So now Krishna is speaking. "My dear great sage among the demigods," he's speaking to Narada, "I think that now everything is well within the three worlds. You are perfectly eligible to travel everywhere in space, in the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems of this universe. Fortunately, when we meet you, we can very easily take information from your holiness of all the news of the three worlds, for within this cosmic manifestation of the Supreme Lord, there is nothing concealed from your knowledge." So Narada Muni is like the CNN or the news reportage every night, Fox News, right? "You know everything, and so I wish to question you. Are the Pandavas doing well? And what is the present plan of King Yudhishthira? Will you kindly let me know what they want to do at present? The great sage Narada spoke as follows. My dear Lord, you have spoken about the cosmic manifestation created by the Supreme Lord, but I know that you are the all-pervading creator. Your energies are so extensive and inconceivable that even powerful personalities like Brahma, the Lord of this particular universe, cannot measure your inconceivable power. My dear Lord, you are present as the supersoul in everyone's heart by your inconceivable potency, exactly like the fire which is present in everyone, but which no one can see directly. Yes, there is fire in the body. The body generates heat. The body has hydrochloric acid that can break down proteins. So that's one aspect of fire in the stomach. In conditioned life, all living entities are within the jurisdiction of the three modes of material nature. As such, they are unable to see your presence everywhere with their material eyes. By your grace, however, I have seen many times the action of your inconceivable potency, and therefore, when you ask me for the news of the Pandavas, which is not at all unknown to you, I am not surprised at your inquiry. In other words, he's saying, you already know, you know more than I know, but you're being kind to me, and you want me to tell you, so I will. My dear Lord, by your inconceivable potencies, you create this cosmic manifestation, maintain it, and again dissolve it. See, this is the way to approach Krishna. You don't approach Krishna and say, give me something, right? You approach him and show that you can understand that he is transcendental personality of Godhead, the source of everything. Right? Only by dint of your inconceivable potency does this material world, although a shadow representation of the spiritual world, appear to be factual. No one can understand what you plan to do in the future. Your transcendental position is always inconceivable to everyone. As far as I am concerned, I can simply offer my respectful obeisances unto you again and again. In the bodily concept of existence, everyone is driven by material desires, and thus everyone develops new material bodies, one after another, in the cycle of birth and death. So as long as we have these material desires, we have to take birth again in another material body and go through the whole cycle again. Being absorbed in such a concept of existence, one does not know how to get out of this engagement of the material body. By your causeless mercy, my Lord, you descend to exhibit your various transcendental pastimes, which are illuminating and full of glory. Therefore, I have no alternative but to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. My dear Lord, you are the supreme Para Brahman, and your pastimes as an ordinary human being are another tactical resource, exactly like a play on the stage, in which the actor plays parts different from his own identity, because the Pandavas, or the Yadu, because the Pandavas are your cousins. You have inquired about them in the role of their well-wisher, and therefore I shall let you know about their intentions. Now please hear me. First, I may inform you that King Yudhishthira has all material opulences which are possible to achieve in the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka. He has no material opulence for which to aspire, and yet he wants to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice only to get your association and please you. King Yudhishthira is so opulent that he has attained all the opulences of Brahmaloka, even on this earthly planet. He is fully satisfied, and he does not need anything more. He is full in everything, but now he wants to worship you to achieve your causeless mercy, and I beg to request you to fulfill his desires. My dear Lord, in these great sacrificial performances by King Yudhisthira, there will be an assembly of all the demigods and all the famous kings of the world. So Maharaj Yudhisthira doesn't want to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice to increase his power, his glory, his fame. It's to designate Krishna as the most worthy of being worshipped, as the most, let's say, exalted personality that's going to be present in the Rajasuya sacrifice. And so it's to glorify Krishna and to worship him. My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Brahman, the personality Godhead, one who engages himself in your devotional service by the prescribed methods of hearing, chanting, and remembering, certainly becomes purified from the contamination of the modes of material nature. And what to speak of those who have the opportunity to see you and touch you directly? My dear Lord, you are the symbol of everything auspicious. Your transcendental name and fame have spread all over the universe, including the higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. The transcendental water which washes your lotus feet is known in the higher planetary system as Mandakini, and in the lower planetary system as Bhogavati, and in this earthly planetary system as Mother Ganges. This sacred transcendental water flows throughout the entire universe, purifying wherever it goes. Just before the great sage Narada arrived in the Sudharma assembly house of Dwarka, Lord Krishna and his ministers and secretaries had been considering how to attack the kingdom of Jarasandha. Because they were seriously considering the subject, Narada's proposal that Lord Krishna go to Hastinapur for Maharaj Yudhisthira's great Rajasuya sacrifice did not much appeal to them. Lord Krishna could understand the intentions of his associates because he is the ruler of even Lord Brahma. Therefore, in order to pacify them, he smilingly said to Uddhava, "My dear Uddhava, you are always my well-wisher. You are always my well-wishing confidential friend. I therefore wish to see everything through you because I believe that your counsel is always right. I believe that you understand the whole situation perfectly. Therefore, I am asking your opinion. What should I do? I have faith in you, and therefore I shall do whatever you advise." It was known to Uddhava that although Lord Krishna was acting like an ordinary man, he knew everything, past, present, and future. However, because the Lord wanted to consult with him, Uddhava, in order to render service to the Lord, began to speak. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 70th chapter of Krishna, Lord Krishna's daily activities. So why did I read this? Because we have to develop a taste for hearing about Krishna's qualities and pastimes and his relationships with the devotees. And this is, of course, is happening on the earth planet, right? And during Krishna's presence and his transcendental pastimes. And why does he come to the earth? It's to show people what's going on in Goloka Vrindavan. So they have an idea of the transcendental activities that are going on there and the relationships. Everything is relational in human, let's say, existence. Everything is relational. And therefore, the relationships that devotees have in Goloka are the supreme pinnacle of achievement. These relationships are free of lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy. And they're just based on love and affection. So this is what we have to hear about, right? Nowadays, if you watch movies, it's usually about, sense gratification, violence, and eventually the bad guys may be defeated. Sometimes they have movies in which the bad guys win nowadays, right? So, but that doesn't teach you anything about transcendental relationships. So Krishna comes to show us what's going on in the spiritual world and the intensity of love and affection that's there. And you can feel the love and affection in the words of Narada Muni, in the words of the devotees, that messenger, and the kings that are in prison. You can actually taste it and feel it, how much affection they have for the Lord, and how they're completely dependent, putting themselves in a position of complete dependence on the mercy of the Lord. So we'll stop right there. And so we discussed that homework about from the other day, and there was homework for not yesterday, but the day before. So did you do that? Okay, come in. We have to develop a taste for hearing these transcendental, the transcendental nature of the relationship of Krishna and his pure devotees is very important, because it shows you what's going on in the spiritual world. Yeah, go ahead. What was the homework for the day before yesterday?
It's Harivilas Chapter 4. From verse 21 to 30.
Yes.
It says...
so we're going systematically through that chapter 4 of the Adi Lila. Go ahead.
So the explanation from those verses, 21 to 30, Lord gets pleasure in his devotees who consider him, Krishna, to be inferior, to be equal or inferior to his devotees, and he becomes subordinate and he enjoys that. Like, for example, in Sakya Ras or friendship, he feels himself equal to some of his friends and inferior to his the older friends. He's subordinate to his parents. He takes lower position, and to also lovers also he assumes sometimes lower position. Just as, so I was just going to explain a little bit. Like, just as Radharani and Chandravali, so Radharani is more of, like liberal as compared to Chandravali. She's more conservative in following rules and regulations. So, with Yoga Maya, they have forgotten that he is Supreme Lord. So they consider him sometimes equal or inferior to them. But we understand the influence of Mahamaya. We are under the influence of Mahamaya. So Prabhu, I'm sorry, Gurumar, so what I understand is Yoga Maya, or in the spiritual world, and the sister of Yoga Maya, or we are under the influence of Mahamaya, right? Maharaj?
Yes.
So, but
Mahamaya takes us away from Krishna.
Yes,
Yogamaya brings us closer to Krishna.
but
So there's illusion in the material world. There's illusion in the spiritual world. But the illusion in the spiritual world is such that we come intimately close to Krishna. In other words, we're free to love Krishna with no inhibitions of rules and regulations in Goloka Vrindavan. And why is there no more any rules and regulations? Because everyone has pure love for the Lord. But in the material world, we don't have that pure love for the Lord, so we have to follow rules and regulations to eventually overcome all our misconceptions and false ego and so forth, and then surrender completely to the Lord. You can't surrender to the Lord if you have a false ego, and you can't surrender to the Lord if you have many false conceptions. So therefore, it's a gradual process here to become free of Mahamaya. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a rather long time. But if we are serious about Krishna consciousness, it can go quickly also. Go ahead.
So I also had a question right after this. I'll ask related to the yesterday's Devi Maya, Guna Maya, then Mahamaya, and Yoga Maya. So Yoga Maya I understood now after your explaining. So Devi Maya, Mahamaya, and Guna
Well,
Maya.
we explained that yesterday, but
Yes.
did you finish this?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we, under the influence of Mahamaya, cannot artificially assume such mellows as equal or inferior to Krishna because we are not pure, we are contaminated and conditioning with three modes of material nature. But instead, if we serve him in dasya or servant mode that is recommended through our acharyas and try to please through pure devotional service, then it is identical to pure love for Krishna, which is unmotivated and uninterrupted. Hare Krishna.
Okay, good. In other words, we have to follow sadhana bhakti.
Sadhana.
There's this group called the International Society for Divine Love. They have a big ashram in Texas. And it was started by a disciple of Kripalu Maharaj, who fortunately is dead now. And the disciple of Kripalu Maharaj just started it. I think his name was Keshava Maharaj. He ran away from the ashram in Texas because some women complained that he took advantage of them, sexually. And now he's a fugitive. You can say, "Oh, nonsense." Now, what does his International Society for Divine Love? What is it about? Obviously, he imitates Prabhupada by saying International Society, right? Prabhupada said International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He says International Society for Divine Love. Well, he says, look, the goal of all knowledge is to attain spontaneous love for Krishna. He said, so his point is, you don't have to follow any rules and regulations of sadhana bhakti. I'll give you the spontaneous love right away. Well, yeah, I mean, his spontaneous love means illicit sex. That's why he had to run away. But he was giving sannyas to women, and they do kirtan. They do kirtans, and sometimes they're crying. They worship Radharani, and they have festivals and all these things. Because Kripalu has this big ashram in Vrindavan that he built, not far from the Krishna Balaram temple. But the whole thing is nonsense. Although, if you don't know anything about Krishna consciousness, you walk into their temple, whether it's in Austin, Texas, or whether it's in Vrindavan, you would say, "Wow, it's like Krishna consciousness," But it's not. It's actually a aberration. It's a false following based on sahaja philosophies. So you can see that India is a fertile place for speculation. All the different types of speculation begin in India and then spread around the world. And therefore, it's very rare to meet someone like Srila Prabhupada who is giving the actual knowledge. You have to go through sadhana bhakti. You can't just jump to raganuga bhakti. It's a bunch of nonsense. What will happen? You'll be like this so-called Keshava Maharaj. You'll fall down, right? His disciples haven't understood that, so they're continuing his nonsense. Okay, but hearing the nature of the relationship between Krishna and his devotees, like we hear in the Krishna book and in the Bhagavatam, this is the nectar. This is the medicine. This is something we have to develop a taste for, and constantly be immersed in it. We don't have to make up any prayers. Just like the Christians, they say, now let us pray. Let's hold hands and pray. And then the minister says, dear Jesus, Jesus, you are so kind. You are so magnanimous. You are so, so merciful. We love you, Jesus. Please now, please heal all the sick people in our congregation. And please do this and please do that, right? So he's making up a prayer, right? And it may sound good in some ways, and there are other parts that sound very fishy, But we should not make up prayers. We should all the prayers are there in the Krishna book, the Brahma Samhita, the Bhagavad-Gita is full of prayers. So we should just repeat these transcendental realizations of pure devotees, just like we were reading the message from the kings that are in prison, and there were also the message of the women that were abducted by Bhaumasura, right, or Narakasura. So you see, the whole Bhagavatam is full of transcendental prayers, and they're glorifying Krishna by pure devotees. So that's what we should focus on and hear and understand the nature of the relationship that devotees have with Krishna in their pure state. So developing that taste for this Krishna Katha is something that we have to develop. It's not always talking about Maya and the material world and the miseries in the material world. That's important to know those things, but what's most important is to develop the taste for transcendental literature, and that the whole Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita is transcendental. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so homework for tomorrow is homework for tomorrow. Explain what you have heard, what you have learned from Narada Muni's statements. Where is that? 1 second. 78. One second. 66. Okay, so chapter 70, near the end, Narada Muni speaks. And explain what you learned from Narada Muni's glorification of the Lord. Yeah, he speaks for about 2 pages, 2.5 pages. Just pick out the transcendental things that he says about Krishna. Haribol. Yes.
Just a little clarification on the today's purport.
Yes.
It says, Srimad Bhagvatam is the sound representative of the Lord.
Yes.
Because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord.
Srila Vyasadeva.
Vyasadeva. Okay.
He is literary incarnation.
Okay, thank you.
Of the Lord that he's a Shaktavash avatar. He's received this one power of the Lord, this literary composition. Right? Therefore, because he's received this power from the Lord, he's considered a Shaktavash avatar. He has the Shakti of literary composition. So he is an incarnation of Krishna.
Thank you.
There's 6 types of incarnations. You have Leela avatars, Purusha avatars, Yuga avatars, Guna avatars, Shaktavish avatars, and Purusha avatars. 6 types. So Vyasadeva is a Shaktavish avatar. He has this Shakti of literary composition. So he's considered an incarnation of Krishna.
Thank you.